Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy show. It has been quite some time. It has been, oh my God, maybe a couple of months that we have been on break, but we are back every single day at 9:30 a.m. Monday through Friday. So we're going to get this community started again. Glad to have you all with us as you tune in, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you may be, YouTube. We just want you to announce yourself. We want to know who you are, where you're from, so that we can have a great conversation. We're going to start off talking about infidelity. As you know, I'm an infidelity recovery specialist, and that is what this particular channel and show is all about: infidelity recovery and infidelity recovery and divorce prevention. We want to prevent divorces because we know that when couples divorce, it leaves an indelible mark, not just on them, but on generations to come. And we believe in the power of healing and restoration. And so we're here to unpack some truths, some things that you need help with, some guidance that you may need so that you can take your life and your relationship to the next level. So today we're going to be talking about the three components of an affair, but more specifically, an emotional affair. The three components of an emotional affair. And so it begs the question, is there a difference between forbidden sex and stolen love? And what is the difference? Well, when we're talking about forbidden sex, we're talking about engaging in a sexual interaction with someone who you are not in a covenant relationship with. That can lead to all types of pain, all types of crisis in a marital relationship. However, what if I never touch you? What if you never touch me? Don't you know that an affair can happen where there is no sex involved at all? It's important to know that. Sometimes the greatest betrayals happen without a single touch because there's a heartfelt connection, there's an emotional entanglement, there is an expression that is shared between the two people that go beyond physicality. And sometimes those relationships can be just as devastating, if not more. So the question is, which is the greater evil, stolen love or forbidden sex? Really, the answer is determined by who you ask. Some people value the emotional connection more than the physical. Some people value the physical more than the emotional. But at the end of the day, it's a betrayal nonetheless. And so while we typically talk about physical betrayals, I thought it would be good to really unpack this thing called an emotional betrayal or an emotional affair. Because with the evolution of infidelity, most people who engage in physical interactions, affairs, infidelity, cheating, they do it with people that they are familiar with. They do it with people that they are connected to. They do it with friends. Okay. And so when we're talking about these three components of an emotional affair, we've got to unpack them, each of them comprehensively, so you could see if you're in something that is potentially devastating to your marriage. So I want to show you this graph that I created. An emotional affair would be similar to a three-legged stool. And each leg of this stool represents the components that we're talking about. So we're going to be talking about emotional intimacy and what that looks like. The power of secrecy, which fuels and drives this betrayal. And then number three, sexual chemistry. It's important that we take our time and unpack this. So, first, let's talk about this emotional intimacy or emotional involvement. See, the reality is, many people really minimize or trivialize or completely discredit this whole idea of an emotional affair because somehow we only equate emotions with, or an emotional affair with, one type of emotion, and that's love, right? So if I don't love this person, then that means I don't have any emotional tie or any emotional chemistry towards that person. And the fact of the matter is, there's more than just love that can get you caught up in a connection that will really betray your primary relationship with your spouse. And so, because we know that people are in close proximity, People work together, people play together, people are on projects together, people volunteer together, people are in each other's social space. The more you begin to interact, the more you begin to communicate. The more you begin to communicate, you go from being professional to personal. Once you step into that personal realm and you begin to open up your heart and open up your mind and share what's going on in your world, that is really the introduction into the danger zone. And this is why many people say that the office, the workspace, is a hotbed for infidelity. Because if I have a coworker who happens to be a female and we are assigned to the same project, well, we're spending several hours a day working together in harmony towards a mutual effort. So we win together, we lose together. We struggle through things together. We support each other. We invest time and emotion in the thing that we're working on, which brings about a connection and a bond. Because when you're working as a part of a team, you have to be able to get along with your team. You've got to have an intimate relationship with your team members to some degree. And so what happens is because my spouse and I did not determine what was appropriate or what was not, we don't have clear boundaries in our relationship. It's so easy for us to enter into this platonic relationship with our eyes wide closed to the reality of what is actually taking place. Now, because things aren't the greatest at home, and because when I get home, I go my way, my spouse goes his or her way, because we live two separate lives, because we just talk about the bills, we just talk about the kids, we just talk about what's for dinner, we just talk about surface things. I need somebody to connect with. I need somebody who understands me. I need somebody to celebrate my wins with and to help me through my struggles with. Now, even though my spouse, the one I said I do to, should be that person, because we really don't talk, we've been distant for quite some time. You know what? Sally at work, man, we just have such a good rapport. We just have such a good relationship. And so I share dreams with Sally. I share struggles with Sally. I share what I did on the weekend with Sally. Why? Because she has a listening ear. She doesn't judge me. She doesn't criticize me. She doesn't take me for granted. She seems like she's interested. She weighs in on my thoughts. It seems like there's this synergy there. We work together. We take coffee breaks together. We keep things light. Coffee breaks then lead to lunch breaks. Lunch breaks lead to the next day. Hey, let's meet for breakfast for a bagel before we go into the work. So what happens is we start having this connection. We start engaging in rituals, daily rituals together that seal the bond. And so now there's this chemistry, right, that I cannot shake. Now, when I say chemistry, I don't mean inappropriate yet, because I keep in my mind justifying why this is okay and why it's really no big deal. And how listen, if I didn't have Sally as a friend and a coworker, I don't know where I'd be. So now I put more weight into this relationship with Sally, and I begin to diminish the significance and the importance of my relationship with my wife. In fact, I now enter into comparisons. Man, I wish Julie was more like Sally. If Julie could just understand me the way Sally does, if Julie could just compliment me the way Sally does, if Julie could just support me in my dreams the way Sally does. And so the more I make this comparison, the less I have any patience and any tolerance for Julie, and more, come on now, more patience, more tolerance, more willingness for Sally. Do you see the slippery slope? Do you see how it begins to take place over the course of time? There's a shift that takes place. Now, emotional intimacy. What does that mean? Because as I'm spending all of this time, now understand, overwhelmingly, most couples struggle in the relationship because of a secret culprit, and that is time. Before we said I do, we spend all of our time together. After I do, we spend very little time together because we have all of our attention and focus on other things. And the least of us we give to our spouse. The least amount of time, if I could find time, I'll spend it with my spouse. But all day I'm developing intimacy, developing relationship, developing connection, developing camaraderie with people outside my home as opposed to the one within my home. So there's a level of emotions attached to that. We win together, I'm excited. We lose together, I'm sad, but we comfort each other. You see where we're going? And so, as you enter into deeper layers of conversation, you're entering into a deeper level of intimacy. We go from talking about casual things, as we would call cliche things, but then we start talking about the general facts of life, and then we start sharing opinions with each other. Man, I think the same way. That's how you think. That's your. I feel the same way. Then we start talking about hopes and dreams and envisioning a life that we would live if we had all of the freedoms and liberties and finances to be able to do it. And then we come together based upon the common shared visions that we had. Then we start beginning to share our feelings, right? Our feelings about how we feel about home life, the struggles we have with the spouse, the struggles we have with the kids, what's going on in our world. That builds a bridge where we now connect in a way that we did not connect before. Then when I'm going through, I get share my fears and my frustrations and my vulnerable spots in my life. And now I have somebody that I can connect with and understand me. We're going deeper into a level of intimacy. But when we get home and our spouse sees that something's on our mind or something's weighing heavy on us, and they ask us, babe, what's going on? Nothing. It seems like you're going through something. I'm good. I'm all right. I'll be all right. See, we don't need it from our spouse because we've already found someone that we're getting it from. That builds an emotional connection that leads to intimacy, which simply means into me see. I'm allowing this person to enter into my heart, my mind. I'm allowing them to see a side of me that I don't share with other coworkers because I don't have the same connection with others the way I have with Sally. So you could replace the workforce with anything, with any environment, with anyone that you have connection with. So we used to only talk between the hours of when we were at the office. Now, when I'm home and I'm struggling, I find myself sending a text. I find myself engaging in conversations over the phone. I find myself connecting through social media. And the more we talk and the more we engage, the more one we feel like we are. So now there's this deficit, this emotional deficit that I have in my marriage. There's an emptiness, there's a void because of neglect. Either me neglecting my spouse neglecting me, us neglecting time together as a couple. And when there's this void, where there's this gap, where there's this huge disparity, it's easy for anything to creep in and to fill up that void. And Sally just happened to be the one at that particular time. So now Sally's got my heart. Sally's got my mind. I begin to feel something for Sally that I haven't felt in a very long. I used to have it with Julie, but I find what I had with her, I now have with her. See, now I begin to question: is this really it? Was this really God ordained? I begin to question if I should even be married. Because that in love feeling that I once had, I don't have that anymore. And once the love is gone, see, because I believe in this new age era, like it's all about feeling good and feeling happy, right? It's all about love. And if I don't feel that love for you, I don't need to be married to you. If I can't be happy, then I don't need to be married to you because Sally makes me happy. And maybe she's the one I need to be with. Emotional tie. You see that? But we minimize it, we trivialize it, and we justify it by saying, we didn't do anything. I didn't touch her. We didn't have sex. So therefore, it cannot be a betrayal. It cannot be an affair. Wrong. See, affairs don't begin in the bedroom, they end there. They begin a whole lot further, beyond, in front of, before that moment. It began in the connection of these conversations. So either A, man, I really enjoy Sally. I really love Sally. Or I love how I feel when I'm with Sally, when I talk to Sally. So fine. I don't, she's okay. She's attractive, kind of, sort of. She's not really my type, but I'm now becoming addicted to her. Why? Because of how she makes me feel. I feel heard. I feel seen. I feel validated. I feel appreciated. I feel desired. Nothing's happened. We don't talk about anything inappropriate, but I feel important. I feel attractive. I feel useful. I feel purposeful. All of these feelings I feel with Sally, but with Julie, I feel disregarded. I feel discouraged. I feel taken advantage of. I feel taken for granted. I feel like I'm just a wallet. I feel like I have no power, no authority, no influence in the home. So I want to go where I feel good. And because I like the way I feel when I'm with her, all of a sudden I begin to like her because she knows how to make me what? Feel. The emotional affair starts with an emotional involvement or an emotional intimacy. Is this making sense? If this is making sense, I want you to comment in the chat because I want to make sure that we're on the same page here. But that is just one leg, that is just one component. But we got to talk about the second leg, which is secrecy. Oh, man. Secrecy is huge. See, what happens is when you are in an affair, the affair always lives in the shadow of the primary relationship, hoping to never be discovered. Now, interestingly enough, many people think, well, you know what? If my spouse is cheating, there's going to be clear signs. Not necessarily, because if your spouse knows what he or she is doing, if they've been doing it long enough, right, they can be in an affair for years without you knowing. So obvious signs aren't always an indication that something's going on. Sometimes you would never know, and it's happening right up under your nose. See, when there is secrecy has the ability of intensifying the emotional connection. In essence, there's an erotic charge that you begin to have with this other person because you both are holding on to a secret. There's something that you two share that nobody else knows about. And what that does is that builds even more of a connection. And now there's this electricity. There's an emotional, sexual electricity that you now share with that other person simply because you keep the secret. Is this making sense? And so what happens is this sexual energy, right? This emotional energy, this electronic it's really like a sexual adrenaline where all of a sudden your heart is beating, right? You're pulsating. Like there's this energy that begins to take over you. There's this drive. There's just something in you that you can't shake, and you got to do something with it. And guess what? You can't do it with your spouse because there's no connection. So who better to do it with? The person you share the secret with, and that happens to be Sally. And so secrecy fuels the lying. It fuels the deception. It fuels the denial. It's what causes us to engage in these elaborate strategies to cover up what we're doing. And what happens is when the affair is discovered, in addition to the affair itself, what leads to the deepest wounds and scars in your spouse is the elaborate cover ups, you covering up the tracks. So when it's revealed, they begin to realize the depths that their spouse went to keep this thing alive. Secrecy causes a person to now begin to live a double life. And this double life is an indication that you may be in this much more than what you thought, that this relationship is deeper than you ever thought imaginable. We're talking about an emotional affair. And guess what? Nobody's touched each other yet. There's been no penetration. There's been no stimulation. It is a heartfelt connection that has built a bond that at the apparent moment seems unshakable. All right, let's go to the next. Next, we have to talk about sexual chemistry. This is critically important. And the reason why I wanted to say sexual chemistry is simply because of this. You can have an affair that never includes sex. It reminds me of the couple that I counseled many years ago. They were probably in their 60s, mid 60s, and they were married for about 32 years. And the husband was in an affair for 32 years. Wait a minute, what? He was in a 32-year affair that hid in the shadows of his 32-year marriage. Well, how did this occur? He he had a high school sweetheart. He didn't wind up marrying her because he was sent off to war. Came back, she's now in another relationship. He chooses somebody else. And so he marries this somebody else, but still has a love, still has a care, still has a desire for his high school sweetheart. And circumstances were the reason why they are not together. But that tie, that bond, that connection was still there. And for 32 years, though they lived hundreds of miles away, though they never in 32 years were ever in the same room together, never touched each other, never made physical contact with each other, they were connected. Now, before there was technology like the internet and social media, they relied on letters. And so they became pen pals. They became secret lovers through letters and through cards, and they would share gifts on holidays, and they would have their special moments in secret, and they would have long conversations and long written letters, and they would engage each other in such an emotional way. But yet, that emotion, that secret created a sexual charge. It was a sexual, and interestingly enough, their imagination began to play out scenarios that they could not fulfill. And so they got caught up in, man, I wish I could do what I would do if I could do, but I can't do, so I won't do. Right? So what happens is you begin to desire the very thing that you cannot have. Now, if you understand sex, sex is more than just about the physical act. If you're not in a good space with your spouse, you can engage in sex and it could feel very empty. It could feel very hollow and shallow. It may give you a physical stimulation because at the end of the day, all it takes is manipulation of the body to create orgasm experiences, but it can feel very empty. A lot of times prostitute John relationships, they're just transactional. And many couples engage in these transactions. It's void of desire. It's void of this chemistry. But the desire that you don't have when you engage physically with your own spouse is a desire that you can crave and long for an affair partner that you never touch. Desire is tricky because with the power of this imagination, and the more you begin to want and crave and desire and thirst and hunger and long for, the imaginative kiss can be just as powerful and just as rewarding as several hours of physical lovemaking. Let's say that again. The imaginative kiss, the strong desire and passion that I have just to embrace you and just to kiss you can be just as erotic and powerful as hours of physical, passionate lovemaking. This is why emotional affairs are so damaging because it doesn't have to include anything physical. If someone else has your heart, if someone else has your mind, if someone else has your focus, if someone else has your attention, then what do we really have? Those things were supposed to be ordained for those within a covenant relationship between you, your partner, and God. That's what it was for. And so now, even though there was never a physical touch, it was a major betrayal that for many people is hard to heal from unless they go through a process. So understand, a lot of sex is less about sex and more about desire because that desire creates an electric, erotic, intensified energy that makes you feel alive, that makes you feel recharged, that makes you feel new. But there's a deadness in the relationship that you have with your spouse. And so oftentimes when there is this electricity that we have, it can lead to sex. And if it leads to sex, it goes beyond a sexual energy to sexual intercourse. So now we're mixing the emotion with the heart. Now we're taking stolen love and combining it with forbidden sex. And once the physical and the emotional come together, that type of an affair is a whole lot harder to overcome unless you go through a process. It's a whole lot harder to break away from unless you go through a process. It's a whole lot harder to deal with. It becomes a struggle unless you go through the correct process. We're talking about the three components of an emotional affair. Listen, we're just laying the groundwork for this conversation. What I need you to do, we're going to go to a quick break, but I need you to post your questions. I know you got questions. I need you to post your comments. If this is you, if this is where you find yourself, what are you going to do to get to a place of healing and restoration? Anyway, stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're watching the Couples Academy Show.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org.
When 45 men from all walks of life come together in one place for one purpose, there is a collective harmony that produces an amplification of power that leaves an impact on the lives of men that cannot be erased. A fraternity of legendary men, all at the tipping point, on the precipice of greatness, meeting for one weekend to turn their worlds inside out. Now in its second year, the Foundry Experience, not an event, not a seminar or retreat, but an opportunity to come face to face with the man that you were always destined to be. If you want a life that's better than the one that you are living, meet us January 2024 for the Foundry Experience. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Couples Academy Show. We're talking about the three components of an affair. Right before we came back, you saw a commercial about the Foundry Experience. Boom. This is going to be the second annual. It said 2023, typo, 2024. Last year, it was an incredible experience that really transformed a lot of men. So if you are a man watching right now, if you are a woman who has a man in your life, I encourage you. Listen, if you get anything from this show, if you get anything from the years that we've been putting out content, why don't you take the next step and experience what it's like to be connected to Couples Academy and all that we have to offer? See, a lot of times you're asking questions and we're here to give you answers, but at some point you got to do something. And doing something sometimes means getting in the room and surrounding yourself and placing yourself in an environment where you can get that change and transformation in a way that you can only experience it in part virtually through shows like this. So go to the website on Couples Academy, sign up for it. It's going to be an amazing experience at the end of January. Why not start your year off right by setting yourself up for success by being a part of this event? All right, getting back to the three components of an affair, we talked about emotional involvement, we talked about secrecy, and we talked about sexual energy. And when you have this, it makes a perfect cocktail for betrayal. This is what we call the perfect storm that can ultimately lead to a full blown affair. And so, when this has occurred and you have discovered it, the question is now, what do you do about it? A question came in that says, this is from Jennifer, I believe, how can I overcome my spouse's affair if I think he's trying to get better at it? And so, I really need more clarity on the question. So, what do you mean by overcome the existing affair? How do you heal from it? How do you move on from it? How do you shut it down? How do you deal with it in the meantime? Like, I just need more clarity. But the fact of the matter is, there are many people who are currently in a situation where their spouse is engaged in an affair and they are in waiting, trying to figure out what to do in the meantime. And the reality is, if your spouse isn't interested in getting help to restore the relationship, you should not be sitting back waiting for their situation to change before you do something for you. Listen, you've got to focus on your own individual healing. And when you work with a practitioner who can help facilitate this situation for you, not only are they helping to help you heal, but they're giving you strategy, they're giving you guidance, they're giving you proper implementation that may help to end that affair and begin the reconciliation process by the two of you entering into couples counseling. But you cannot do this on your own. I don't know why we tried to DIY ourselves through our recovery process. You cannot do it on your own. You cannot do it yourself. It takes having a level of wisdom and insight and guidance and proper steps and implementation to get from where you currently are to where you currently want to be. And so, listen, it's easy to say, hard to do, but with guidance and daily course correction, you can get there. There is this preoccupation and obsessiveness with what the spouse is doing, which makes time feel very long, and the experience of time feels very hard because you're focused on and caught up in something that you have zero control of. And so it would be better to reshift your focus and place it on the one thing that you do have control of, and that is who? Yourself. And when you work on your own personal healing, and when you establish new rules for what the relationship should look like, when you now create boundaries to protect yourself. Now, understand, the boundaries that you create aren't to control the other person. The boundaries that you create are to help to control you. It's causing you to show up different. It's causing you to do life different. And so when someone's in an affair, but still living in the home and still doing life as usual, as if nothing has ever happened, and you're complicit with it, you're sending a message because everything communicates. It communicates that, hey, I guess what I'm doing is okay. There's no consequence to what I do. And even if there's a strained relationship and things aren't what they were, like if I'm still showing up the way that I was prior to the affair, then something's got to shift and change. So you need guidance on what that looks like. And so, listen, I would encourage you, reach out to us. Let's have a session. Let's unpack the situation that you're in and give you proper strategy to help you heal. Man, the questions are coming in. Let's go. Let's see what they got to say. Florence, I have done everything to help my husband overcome his addiction. I don't see his work panning out. His behavior is staying the same towards me. He has 3 years sober. I'm not acting out. Okay. So you've done all that you can do to help his addiction. And so this is why we say both of you have a role to play. And unfortunately, there are times when you actually do want it more than the spouse wants it for him or herself because they're not in a mental, emotional state to make empowering decisions for oneself because they're still slave to an addiction. And when they are slave to an addiction, in that season, in that process, it's almost like having a reprobate mind. You do things that don't serve you. You do things that are self-sabotaging. You do things that keep you trapped in that addiction, which keeps you trapped in this miserable relational dynamic that makes matters worse. And so I'm not sure what has been done, if he's gone to through a program, an addiction recovery program, if he's a part of a community or support group, if he's going through some type of monitoring or some type of something, but something beyond or in addition to what you've done, he's got to do. And so the question is, what do you do in the meantime? Right? That's the question that we ultimately need to be asking ourselves. What are we doing in the midst of this betrayal that'll help get us through or potentially help us overcome? All right. Another question. How do I move past him texting other women, but tells me it's not cheating, it wasn't emotional? Well, the thing is, you can't move past it. You can't move past it, because if you move past it, then that's giving him permission to engage in the same behavior that is really sabotaging your relationship. So, I know I keep saying the same thing, counseling, but obviously not everybody's interested in counseling at that time. And so sometimes it takes an awakening. Sometimes it takes an awareness. And so my thing is, how are you showing up? What are you doing? What is your reaction? How are you responding to what he's doing? See, everybody, and I've said this for years, everybody has motivation to do the right thing. The question then becomes, have you identified your spouse's motivation to give up the behavior that is betraying you? Have you tapped into the motivation that would encourage him to want to restore the marriage? See, this is a deeper question. Maybe we need to do a topic just on what motivates your spouse. Now, keep in mind, some people are motivated by pleasure. Some people are motivated by pain. Meaning, if I know that there's the possibility that I can experience this pleasure, I'm driven by that. But if I know that man, if I don't stop this behavior, I may experience this pain, I'm driven by that. Now, interestingly enough, most people respond to pain more than they do to pleasure. See, this is a deeper level of a conversation that I need to share with you, because maybe the way you've been doing things and reacting and responding to things hasn't been effective. So you figure, well, let me just go harder in the paint. Let me just be more committed. Let me try just a little bit harder. Maybe this time it'll lead to a breakthrough. No, you are addicted to the same. You are addicted to the familiar, something that has proven not to work. So it requires you having to do something different. And when you do something different, you will ultimately get a different result. And so, listen, guys, we're way past our time, but I'm glad that we're connected again. How many of you want to come back tomorrow so that we can continue this conversation? There are questions in this chat that I'm going to start with tomorrow so that I can give you a comprehensive understanding of how to navigate through your particular situation. But you've been watching the Couples Academy show. We've been talking about the 3 components of an emotional affair. Tune in tomorrow for part 2, because it's going to get deeper. But until then, I want you to have an amazing day. I want you to enjoy yourself. I want you to share this with your spouse. Watch the video together so that breakthrough and transformation can become your reality. Love you guys. Take care.